I should have written this down because I did have some things I wanted to say to everybody, and you guys set a very high standard. And everyone's looking at me, which of course I love, but it's also no, it's good. So let's see. Okay, breathe. That's what I tell my daughter, when she has a presentation. Just stop. If you get lost, look reproachfully at the audience and take a sip of water. So this is a reproachful look. But anyway, 70 is seriously scary. Because all through your 60s, you're sort of telling yourself that you're middle-aged, which kind of works if you're planning to live to be about 130. But you hit 70, and that's it. That's the portal. That's old age. And you sort of know that the path ahead of you can be a good bit shorter than the path behind you. And at the end of that path, there's this really scary monster called mortality. So it's scary. My students, I used to assign them personal essays. And many of the personal essays were about grandparents. And I had a whole gallery of grandparents, and they dispensed wisdom, and they dispensed cookies and nurturance and sometimes some torment. But the last paragraph of these essays was almost always the same. My grandma's in a nursing home now, and she doesn't know who I am. But there was a grandmother whose image I've been carrying with me. I think she was Norwegian. And way into her 90s, she wore bright red lipstick and high heels and used to dance around the living room floor with my students singing, and that's the way I like it. Okay. So it seemed to me very clear that the only way to deal with this, whatever it is, was to celebrate. But the fact is, I'm not very good at parties. I'm very neurotic about parties. Those of you who got my flurry of emails, my God, they're going to go hungry. Nobody's going to come. All know this. When my daughter was little, I was so afraid that the party I gave for her would wreck her school life, her social life, everything, that by the time she was 6, she was taking me by the hand and saying, "Don't worry, Mom, I've got this under control." So I expressed this to, it is true, you remember. I expressed this to my friends Paula and Kathy, who are the souls of generous hospitality, and they said, no, you should have a party. And then I talked to Rob, who's the guy that sort of gives me a window into this strange world of people who are much, much younger. And he said, no, we'll help you with your party and make sure you don't do any stupid old person things. And then Ellen, where are you? Ellen, who just last week finished her first novel. And is going to tell you that it's shit, it's just a first draft. But I know this woman. She is funny, and she is smart, and she is wise, and anything she writes is going to be worth reading. So we decided on the party. And now I'm just going to sort of backtrack a little bit to something that Paula referred to, which is that, yes, when I was born, the bombs were falling. And my parents had lost their homes and had lost their families, and their parents had been killed, and my mother was terrified. And she said to my father, how can we be bringing a baby into a world like this? And my father pointed out to her that when they were born, no one would have predicted the things they would have to face, and in the same way, no one could possibly predict the kind of life I would have. And I'm just here to tell you, and I wish I could tell them, it's been lovely. It's just been fantastic. And some of the reasons you may have intuited, because if you walked into our garden, you saw the curving pathways and the flower beds, and I don't know if you heard all the bird song, but we have a lot of, like a living carpet of birds out there sometimes, and what you walked into is the mind of the man who designed that garden, and that's the man Are you here? That's the guy I've been living with for almost 40 years now.
Who always has her back.
He always has my back. We have a daughter who we consider a little biased, but we consider her absolutely the soul of wisdom and grace, and she brings us joy every day. And she has 2 little boys who are maybe the funniest boys in the entire universe. And let's see, and then, you know, there's you guys. There's people whose lives have been so intermeshed with mine for so long that using the word family is sort of redundant, and that's Lynn and Gunnar, and you don't get to gloat because you're hitting 70 pretty soon too. And Louise and Steve. He's only 40. And their amazing daughters, Joy and Dana, who sort of grew up as sisters to my daughter. And there's Lisa, who is one of my first students from maybe 30 years ago. Let's say 30. And Ellie, wherever she is, who was my student about 3 years ago. And of course, Rob. And all of you. And believe me, if we had all evening, I would have a little encomium. Because I invited, because you all really matter to me. And I love you guys, and I appreciate your coming. And I appreciate your great kindness in helping me over this particular threshold. So thank you very much. Oh, and I just have one question. If, after we've had cake, Rob cranks the music, would you guys dance out in the garden? Okay. Thank you.